All right, so welcome to another deep dive. You ready to get into this?
Absolutely. Always excited to deep dive.
Today we're going to be looking at pure persuasion, how that relates to the dialectic process, and then meaning making, and using Kenneth Burke's A Rhetoric of Motives to kind of unpack some of these things. And to make it a little bit more fun, we're going to use pop culture examples like Star Wars and Batman to, illustrate some of these abstract concepts.
Sounds good to me.
Right out the gate, Burke throws this thing out there. Scientists serving sovereigns, which, I don't know, maybe a little confusing, but what do you make of that?
Yeah, so it's an interesting way, I think, to introduce this idea of conflicting motivations. And he's not talking about scientists working for, like, kings and queens, but rather sovereign to represent any kind of higher power or authority, whether it's, a government, a corporation, an ideology, things like that.
Yeah. So it's like the scientist is trying to serve two masters, right? On one hand, they're trying to find the truth, follow the scientific method, but then on the other hand, they're bound by the expectations of, whoever is funding their research, to produce a certain outcome.
Exactly. And that tension, that struggle to balance those competing interests is something that, we see all the time, not just in science, but just life in general.
And he connects this, right, this idea to pure persuasion, which I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but how do you see that connection?
Yeah, pure persuasion, according to Burke, is about achieving a kind of shared understanding. So it's not about one side winning, but rather, both sides coming to some sort of common ground, maybe, that transcends that original conflict.
So it's like almost like a merging of the minds, so to speak.
Exactly. And this brings us to another key concept, which is the dialectic process. So this is this back and forth between opposing ideas, that tension that drives the search for resolution and new meaning.
Okay, and it reminds me a lot about the Jedi Order in Star Wars.
Yeah.
They're these keepers of the peace, serving the Republic, much like scientists serving their sovereigns.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. And just like the scientists, the Jedi have, their own code, their own set of principles that sometimes might put them at odds with, the political powers that be.
Yeah, you can see that in, I think it was Attack of the Clones, where Mace Windu confronts Palpatine and says, we're keepers of the peace, not soldiers. You feel that right there, that tension between their duty to the Republic and their commitment to, their Jedi way.
Absolutely. And then, on the other side of that, you've got Obi-Wan trying to warn Anakin about Palpatine's true nature and Revenge of the Sith. He sees that conflict, but unfortunately, Anakin doesn't really heed his warnings.
Which, this is interesting. A lot of fans see Anakin's fall to the dark side as like a personal failing. But what if we looked at it through this lens of, Burke's ideas? Like, could we argue that it was actually a failure of the dialectic process?
Yeah, it's an interesting take. Burke talks about this idea of consubstantiation. And that's basically, the goal of the dialectic process, that merging, the reconciliation of those opposing ideas that allows for a deeper understanding to emerge.
So it's like his inability to reconcile, his loyalty to Palpatine with his Jedi principles led him down this dark path.
Potentially. And it shows just how important this process is, not just in stories, but in our own lives as well.
Absolutely. It makes me think about all those arguments where you just go back and forth with someone and neither one is really listening to the other. You're so focused on your viewpoint that you kind of miss out on the opportunity to create something, new.
Yeah, that's a great example. And really brings it back to this idea of pure persuasion, that it's not about winning or losing. It's about using that uh, dialectic tension to reach a higher level of understanding, a place where new meanings can be born.
This is blowing my mind. So it's like it's not about avoiding conflict. It's about using it to make something. I don't know. I'm already starting to see how this stuff is pretty relevant, to everyday life.
For sure. And this is just the beginning. He connects all these concepts to some interesting places like courtship, education. But uh, we'll save that for our next deep dive.
I'm ready. I'm on the edge of my seat. This is awesome.
Yeah.
This is so cool. I think people are really going to enjoy this.
Welcome back. We're picking up where we left off, talking about pure persuasion and how important that dialectic process is in achieving shared understanding.
It really got me thinking about all the arguments and disagreements in life where we just miss that opportunity for consubstantiation because you're so busy trying to prove you're right.
Yeah, and that's where Burke's ideas about transformation come into play. He says this dialectic process can lead to like a profound shift in our understanding. It's almost like, a rebirth. And he actually uses this word leap to describe that change in perspective.
Oh, a leap. I love that. A leap across the divide.
Hmm.
So how does this leap actually happen? What causes that shift?
Well, Burke talks about the incommensurable, which is like this gap between our old way of thinking and this new reality that's emerging. Our old language just can't capture that magnitude of change.
Okay, so we need like a new vocabulary, a new way of thinking even, to even begin to grasp this new understanding.
Exactly, and this is where things get interesting. Burke connects this idea of transformation to some pretty unexpected areas, like courtship and education.
Wait, courtship, like dating. What does that have to do with, learning a new language or scientific theory?
I know it sounds strange, right?
Yeah.
But think about it. When you're falling in love with someone, you're essentially being persuaded to see the world through their eyes.
Okay, yeah.
You're kind of adopting their language, their ways of expressing affection. You know their values, and it's a process of merging your understanding with theirs, creating something new.
Huh. So you're kind of learning this, like, new language of love.
Yes, exactly. And Burke argues that something similar happens in education. We're presented with new information, and it forces us to expand our understanding. And if we're open to it, we undergo this transformation, and our minds leap across that gap, that incommensurable gap, and we see things differently.
Those aha moments, where a concept just clicks.
Yeah, and in the same way that with courtship, maybe you pick up on your partner's expressions and things like that. In education, you're adopting new terms, new concepts.
Okay, this reminds me of a really powerful example of this transformation in pop culture. Batman's broken back in the Knightfall storyline.
Oh, yeah. It's not just a physical injury.
Okay.
It's like a symbolic breaking of Batman and forces him to reevaluate everything.
He's literally brought down to his knees by Bane, who has completely outsmarted him, overpowered him at every turn, and it's like this shattering of the myth of the invincible Dark Knight.
That's where the incommensurable comes in, right?
Yeah.
How do you even describe that experience? The old vocabulary just doesn't cut it anymore.
So how does he, leap across this incommensurable gap? How does he transform?
Well, in Batman Begins, Christian Bale's Batman says he has to become something elemental, something terrifying. And he realizes that the power isn't about physical prowess. It's about what he represents, the idea.
The symbol, right? Yeah, I see that.
It's a rebirth, not just of the body, but of the idea.
But not all transformations are positive. Like, what about when someone makes that leap, but in the wrong direction?
That's a good point. And it makes me think of another character from Knightfall, Azrael, the replacement Batman. He is a very different type of transformation.
Yeah, he just wants vengeance, and he doesn't follow Batman's code against killing.
Right. He shows us that transformation without understanding can be very dangerous.
And so it goes back to the importance of that dialectic process, that it's not about change just for the sake of change. It's about finding meaning and understanding.
Exactly. To make that leap in a way that is both transformative and meaningful.
This makes me think about those big turning points in my own life, you know, where my view of the world just totally shifted. Those were often preceded by periods of like intense questioning, like wrestling with different ideas.
And that's what's so cool about Burke's work. It gives us this way to understand those processes of change that are so important to us as people.
So how does this new vocabulary we talked about fit into pure persuasion?
Well, after we undergo a big transformation, our old language, our old ways of describing things just aren't enough anymore. We need a new vocabulary to express this new understanding that came through the dialectic.
So it's not just about like changing your mind, it's about changing how we talk about the world.
Exactly. And now Burke connects his ideas to Joseph Campbell's concept of the monomyth, the hero's journey.
Oh, the call to adventure, the trials, the return. Yeah, I can see it.
Campbell talks about the return as a big moment of change. They've faced their fears, they've overcome obstacles, and they've emerged, changed. But it's not just about them. They come back with new knowledge to share with their community.
Like Luke Skywalker, coming back from Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back. He's not just a better pilot, he's a Jedi Knight.
Exactly. And this is where Burke's purification comes in. It's about refining our understanding. But to express that new understanding, we need new words, a new way of talking.
Incredible. We've gone from scientists and Jedi to Batman and heroes' journeys, and it all comes back to these core concepts: dialectic, consubstantiation, transformation. It's really amazing how Burke's ideas apply to so many things in life.
And we're just scratching the surface. There's so much more we could talk about, but I think this is a good start to help us understand how these ideas help us navigate the world.
Yeah, for sure. This has been an amazing deep dive so far. I feel like I'm seeing things in a new way, thanks to all the stuff from Burke. I can't wait to see where we go in the last part. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been exploring a lot of really cool stuff from Kenneth Burke's A Rhetoric of Motives. This whole dialectic process and that leap of transformation and needing new words to describe those aha moments.
Yeah, we've seen how all this stuff plays out in surprising places,
Mhm.
from the Jedi to Batman's recovery.
But how about like our own lives, you know?
Yeah.
How can we tell when pure persuasion is happening to us? What's it like to actually go through one of these transformations?
It's not always, like a big sudden revelation. Sometimes it's gradual, like peeling back the layers of an onion.
So it's not like one aha moment, but maybe a bunch of smaller ones, kind of adding up over time.
Right. And it often involves, taking in new knowledge, new ideas, and adding them to what we already know. It's
Yeah.
like adding ingredients to a recipe. The flavor changes, gets more complex.
Okay, I like that. So how do we know when those new ingredients have I don't know, really changed our understanding of something?
Well, there's often, a feeling of clarity, like things suddenly click into place,
Yeah.
like you found the missing puzzle piece.
Like when you're struggling with a problem and then the solution just pops into your head and you're like, how did I not see this before?
Or think about a conversation that totally changed your mind about something. Maybe you heard new information, or maybe it was just a new way of looking at it.
Yeah, those conversations can be powerful.
And that's when we need to change our vocabulary. We need to find new words because the old ones just don't cut it.
It's like when you learn a new language, you start to see the world differently because you have all these new words to use.
Yeah. That's one of the things I really like about Burke is he's saying that this whole transformation thing, it's not a one-time thing.
Mm.
And we always had to be open to, new ways of thinking, new ways of talking.
This deep dive into a rhetoric of motives has been awesome. We've talked about everything from scientists and Jedi to Batman and needing new words. I mean, it's amazing how these ideas can affect how we understand ourselves and the world.
And the most important thing is that we don't just keep these ideas in our heads. Burke's given us these tools to see how persuasion works, how meaning is created, not just in stories, but in our lives.
So, what's the one thing you hope people take away from this?
Just pay attention. Pay attention to, how we talk, how we tell stories, how we experience the world. Because in all those little moments, those conversations, those experiences, we might see like glimpses of this transformation, those leaps to a deeper understanding of ourselves and everything.
That's an awesome challenge for all you deep divers out there. As you experience those moments, think about the words used to describe them. Is there a change in vocabulary? What does that tell you about the change itself? Until next time, happy diving.